Folks, I am Soul and welcome to the Soul Sessions. And with me today, well, a man of many accolades, the Modfather, a former WWE NXT UK Tag Team Champion, Impact Tag Team Champion, and the current reigning Rev Pro Tag Team Champion, Flash Morgan Webster. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, great to be here. And again, as I said just before we started, you're looking very, very, very well dressed. I feel a little underdressed myself.
Well, as you know, Soul is definitely the one that loves to attire and make sure everyone feels welcomed and properly represent the world of professional wrestling. But also, Flash, with every guest I have on, I always ask, every guest has a story and every story has a beginning. Flash, how did your story begin as a wrestling fan?
As a wrestling fan, as a weird one. See, I feel like there's two or three different stories that in my head that kind of like keep on going round. So that like I remember this Ultimate Warrior figure when I was younger. I remember kind of having this in my house. I don't know how I got it. I don't remember if I picked it up myself or if my mum got it or whatever. I remember this figure and I remember being interested in that. But then really where I kind of really started to fall in love with professional wrestling, if I believe, is I came across Royal Rumble on Channel 4. It was when Channel 4 was showing wrestling. And I remember, I think Heat was on first and then Rumble was on. And I remember kind of seeing this Heat and then wanting to stay up. And my mum was saying I couldn't stay up. So I begged. I was like, please let me record this, please. And I was like, I was so interested in what this was. And I remember kind of people maybe talking about wrestling in school. And I was like, okay, I want to see what this is. And again, as soon as I saw it, had me from the start.
Hey, there it is, man. You mentioned the Royal Rumble there. Obviously, one of the big four pay-per-views. And I feel like it's the best one for watching and maybe introducing people with the surprise factor of wrestlers coming in. I want to know, Flash, with the Royal Rumble, do you think it really is the best introduction pay-per-view for fans?
Can I pause you for 1 second? Because the dog seems to have got something and he is going after.
So obviously, Flash, you mentioned there the Royal Rumble, obviously one of the big four pay-per-views. And I feel like with the Royal Rumble, you know, the whole concept of it, introducing wrestlers at random and there's that chance of anyone could win. Do you feel like the Royal Rumble could be like the best pay-per-view to introduce new fans to wrestling?
I think so, yeah. Like, I think there's a reason. Like, I teach at a school. I'm one of the head trainers, and just this week we were doing some kind of showcase moments. If you're in a Rumble and you come out and you go ING for those 45 seconds, and you got a ring full of people, and I think especially when you're on independent shows, a lot of them, especially the smaller down ones, which are more family based, they do like to advertise Royal Rumbles or Battle Royals. And I think if you're a child and you're watching wrestling, and wrestling is one of the most exciting things you can watch, but if you're watching it and there's a ring full of 15, 20, 30 people, and they're all battling, and the rules are pretty easy to understand. You get thrown over the top, you're eliminated, you have to go to the back, and it comes down to one person. I think that's so exciting. So I think, yeah, I definitely believe that not only are they a good spots for introducing new characters, but also good spots as well for new wrestling fans to kind of get involved and go, well, this is really exciting. I'm not just watching two wrestlers for 15 minutes. I'm going to watch a revolving door of different characters, styles, personalities, moves for the next hour to hour and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like a tapas restaurant where you get multiple little dishes and you can sample each one. So I want to know, Flash, say there was somebody watching and you had to teach on Royal Rumble specifically and you had to look at a visual concept for a Royal Rumble. Which WWE Royal Rumble would you recommend as being like the best one to study?
Oh, there's I'm awful when it comes to the dates, right? But I tell you the ones where people win. Like, I think the one that like Flair one is in 93 or 92, I think it is.
92.
That one's great. There's a lovely moment where you've got Piper and him are about to get into it, and then here comes Jake the Snake, and Jake ruins everything, just being this great heel of kind of ruining the chemistry. So that's like a really good one. For me as well, the one I first saw would have been the one where Austin won in 2001. So that one's great as well because like the deck is stacked against him. Year before it as well, where you've got him and McMahon running around the entire arena trying to get away, and then Vince ends up winning on top. Like, again, so exciting. So I think those are my ones, if I'm totally honest. But one of the ones I'd say as well is like anything that Kofi's done over the last couple of years, because again, he's somebody who kind of took the moment of a Royal Rumble and went, hey, maybe I'm not going to win it, but I'm going to be the most memorable thing in this Royal Rumble. And I think everyone was looking forward every year to seeing what Kofi was going to do. I've been at in nightclubs when the Rumble's showing, and people have come or brought their girlfriends who, you know, they're a little bit interested, but they just come for a night out and stuff like that. And then when he like lands on the chair or he lands on something and he's got to get himself back, they're like, oh, he's eliminated. And they go, no, he's not. His feet doesn't touch the floor. And then they're like, what do you mean? And they go, okay, he's got to get back. And then they go, he can't make that jump. So like, he's another one. I think, again, I can't pinpoint that down, but I think anything where you can kind of look at Kofi's most memorable moments and maybe watch one of those Rumbles where he has a big run in it, I think that's a really good one.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember I was in Glasgow for the Royal Rumble where Drew won. And that was...
I was about to say, that's another great one because, like, again, especially when he eliminates Lesnar, the place, like, I didn't think he was winning then. He eliminates Lesnar, and I was like, oh, that's his moment. He's going to get him and Lesnar at me. He's like, maybe he'll get him, but he's not going to be the winner. This sets them up nicely. But the fact that they, like, they went all the way with him then, yeah, that's a great Rumble.
Oh, I know. It was like there was crying everywhere. People were tearing up their English notes and like, freedom, we've done it. Achievement made to the Scottish pride. And it was like, oh, God, beautiful days indeed. But obviously, when the Rumble is coming up, it's going to be something that's coming up very soon. And there's a lot of big names in WWE at the moment that could win it from the men and women's side. So I want to know, let's get your wee old Booker cap on. Who would you like to be the final four of this year's men's and women's Royal Rumble?
Right, so men, I think 4. If you had to pick 4, I'd run it down to CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Gunther or Walter, and then maybe you throw somebody in there that's, simmering away. Maybe you chuck like an LA Knight or someone like that in there. I think that's a very strong 4 there. That'd be you could look at that and go, right, any of those men could go on to headline a WrestleMania with him, especially the 3. LA, I know, has just had his shot, but I think the other 3 you could look at and go, any 3 of those could headline a WrestleMania. So those that ones. And then for me, then I think for the women, again, we had the rumors recently that Sasha Banks was potentially going back, but it looks like now that she's going to go to AEW is what we're hearing. So for the women, it gets a little bit harder, but maybe like I think Bayley. I think Tegan Knox, go with Tegan Knox, good Welsh girl. Love to see her in the final 4. That'd be absolutely great. That would make my year. Tegan, I'd like to see then maybe some returns. Maybe we throw like a wild card in there. Maybe we have something like maybe we have a Trish in there because I think Trish could play spoiler, and then maybe like her and Tegan or something could eliminate each other, and that could go into something else. And then like a Becky Lynch, I think you have the star power of Becky because you can heat Becky up whenever you want and check her towards the main event. But I think that's those 3, especially when you look at like maybe they went towards like a Rhea. I think Becky and Rhea would be a great match. I think Tegan and Rhea have this great history, especially with Tegan blowing her knees out and stuff like that against Rhea. So that's a great one. But then of course you have legacy people in there like a Trish and stuff like that. So yeah, I think those would be my final 4.
Right, mate, indeed, there's some hell of competition in there. I'm pretty sure Meltzer's like foaming at the mouth, like, oh, 5 stars. I can't give this 5 stars. This is going to be absolutely banging. I mean, hey, just shows you're a hell of a booker and you've got this appetite for story. But obviously, as well, Flash, I'm quite a new wrestling fan myself. In 2019 is when I actually got into this whole crazy world. And I know, especially with the UK scene back in the day, even 10 plus years ago, it was quite like small. There was not much to learn, not much to train. So I want to know, how was the UK scene when you first started?
So I started in officially 2010, I think it was. So yeah, it was small, small in the sense of the internet really hadn't really took grasp at this point. I think like there was pockets of stuff. You had, I think maybe at the time it was like an IPW, 1PW had existed and then it had gone away. But you had an IPW, which then, of course, then would fragment and become Revolution Pro. But like, especially Wales, there was no real Welsh scene. We had Welsh wrestling down there that were doing a lot of the family shows. We had Celtic wrestling, which is where I started out, and they were kind of doing these small little social clubs, running their own little insular stories, but kind of bringing in people now and again, but nothing really big. No one was kind of getting out to that. And you'd have like a role. You had like your James Masons coming down doing the ring jobs and stuff like that, and you'd get in with them hopefully. But yeah, that was kind of how it was in Wales. And then I remember Mark Andrews was kind of trying to get out of Wales and trying to move around a lot. And Mark will become a theme that we speak about a lot, I'm guessing, on this podcast. But Mark was really pushing and trying to get out there, and he met a group of Midlands wrestlers, and especially met this 14-year-old, I think he was at the time, which when we all met him, I was like, well, this kid's a prodigy. He's going to be absolutely great. And then this kid went on to become Pete Dunne, obviously. Yeah, it was from the brainchild then of like a Pete Dunne and Mark Andrews and our good friend Jim Lee, who used to wrestle as Helix, doesn't wrestle anymore, who would literally decided that, okay, we need something in Wales that can kind of do the American style of independent wrestling, but with a British twist. So then Catay's Community Centre kind of started running shows, and then from there, Attack kind of started running in Bristol, and out to the birth of that, you had places like Pro Wrestling Chaos became a thing in Bristol as well. So that's been running now 10 years as well. So yeah, at the time, there wasn't a lot of opportunities. You would kind of go into shows and it'd be a one and done. There'd be no continuous storylines. There wasn't people traveling in for shows. It was just locals, and you were trying to get your foot in the door for regular work. But yeah, there wasn't a lot going on, if I'm totally honest. There's a lot of us DIY having to kind of build the scene ourselves.
No, absolutely. I mean, you guys definitely built something great with everything up in Edinburgh and Scotland as well, Wales and London, just so much being built. But obviously, before we continue on the wrestling, with the UK itself, we love our entertainment. We love our game shows, which people can win a bit of money on. And I believe you've been on one, little old Deal or No Deal, if I'm correct, my friend.
Yeah, funny you should say this. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was at my gym, somebody I know quite well, one of my mates. And I've known him now for maybe about 4 or 5 years. And I was talking about learning to drive. And I said, I learned to drive quite late. And I said, I really couldn't afford it. And I said, it wasn't until about 2016. And then one of the other guys was like, oh, was that like, was it then kind of got after uni, you got a job and stuff like that? I was like, oh, no, I won some money on Deal No Deal. And my mate who known me for 4 years went, what? And I was like, oh, yeah, I was on Deal No Deal. And he was like, when? And I was like, 2016, 15, something like that. And he was like, why do I not know this? And he's like, have you got the footage? And I was like, yeah, I've got the footage. And he was like, can you send it me? So it's funny you should ask that, because I've been friends with this guy for a good 4 or 5 years, and this conversation's never ever come up. And yesterday it came up. So the fact that you're mentioning it now is quite funny.
It just shows the stars kind of aligned as well. Because I believe on the show as well, don't you put Noel Edmonds in like a wrist lock or something like that?
Yeah, so he likes to banter now. There's a lot of mixed stories when it comes to people coming out of Deal No Deal. People turn around and saying that Noel was a bit standoffish with them, or Noel was a bit rude with them. But me and Noel got along, and I think the reason we got along is he likes to banter. He always liked to be like the center of attention, and every time he tried to banter me, I was really quick. I was always thinking to myself, right, okay, if he gives me a moment here, I've got to be on it. So he tried a few different times, and I was always on it. And then I think they decided, okay, we're going to feed this to him now that this guy's a wrestler. And this wasn't on my episode. This was because I was on about 14 episodes altogether. And he is on somebody else's episode. And he goes, you're a wrestler? And I go, yeah. So he goes, show me then. So I come along and I grab his arm. And I think, okay, maybe he's going to let me put him in something, and I can kind of show everybody how I move him around. And I grab his arm, and he just tightens up as hard as he can. He will not let me move his arm. And I remember, I don't know why, but in my head, at the time, I think I'd done a little bit of training with Dave Mastiff, and Dave's Mastiff's voice came in my head. And it was, he was like, protect the business. That's what came into my head. So I just grabbed his shoulder, grabbed his wrist, and I turned him as hard as I could. And Noel goes from smirking that I can't move his arm to him wincing in pain that he's going, no, my arm hurts. And I had him in it like that. And after that, then there was like a few more bits where he tried to have a bit of banter with me, and I kept having him. And then in one of the commercial breaks, I think I had this really good answer for something, and the crowd really laughed and thought it was funny, and he thought it was funny as well. But I'd kind of done him a bit of a kipper, and he was like, after we went to commercial break, he came up to me and went, I'm going to stop doing this for me and you. He said, can I keep on coming off badly? And I went, it's cool, man. I was like, I'm just having fun. And he was like, yeah, that's cool. But he was always good with me. And when I did the game as well, he said to me, like, afterwards, he was like, oh, that was one of my funnest games I've done. So that meant a lot coming from him.
Oh, hey, you've done well, and you walked away with a bit of cash. So I would say success all around, buddy. Well done for you. But obviously, to the world of professional wrestling as well, you've met quite a few legends, obviously, with your time with NXT as well. But you've met people like Kevin Nash, Mick Foley, and some of these great minds within the business. Is there anyone, say if you're going to get like a dream seminar, anyone of all time, sit down 30 minutes and pick their mind and, learn, who would you want to pick their mind?
Do they have to be alive? Is that
anyone?
Anyone. Oh, okay. If it's anyone, then it has to be Eddie Guerrero. It has to be. I'd love to get Eddie Guerrero. Like, that's one of the things I always think about. Like, I've been very lucky that in my top 5, like, there's Shawn Michaels, there's Mick Foley, there's Eddie Guerrero, there's a few others, stuff like that. So Piper. So I was fortunate to have a brief little conversation with Piper, maybe about 5-10 minute conversation with Piper. So it was quite nice. I got to meet him. I got to tour the UK with Mick Foley and be a host for his Q&A. So I got to spend a lot of downtime with Mick Foley, so that was great. So Mick was fantastic. Got to spend a lot of time with Shawn Michaels working on NXT and NXT UK, so got to pick his mind a lot. So I've been very fortunate when it came to that sort of stuff. But the one person he's my absolute favorite is Eddie Guerrero. And unfortunately, I've never ever got to meet Guerrero. So for me, if I got to pick anybody, so if I was to split it into two and say past and present, if it was anyone for me, it'd be Guerrero, because I would love to just be able to meet Eddie Guerrero, because I'll never get that opportunity. I love to pick his brain and chat to him about stuff, especially being he worked a lucha style and then transitioned to a main eventer, so I'd love to talk to him about that. And then if there's anybody in the world, again, I've met him, but I didn't get a chance to pick his brains. Daniel Bryan would be the one, Bryan Danielson.
Oh, that would be something.
I'd love to. Yeah, I personally think he's the best wrestler in the world. I generally think Bryan Danielson is the best wrestler in the world. Like, I know people can make the argument and stuff like that, but he can do everything. Some people turn to say, he's not the best wrestler in the world. He's just one of the best of all time. I go, but he's still wrestling, and when he wrestles, he still absolutely smashes it. Like, he had that Iron Man match with MJF recently, and I generally think it's one of the best Iron Man matches I've ever seen. It'll be really sad when he retires, if he retires this year, but I generally think he's one of the best. I think he is the best in the world, and I think he's one of the best of all time.
No, absolutely. I'm agreeing with you 100%. You got no disagreement from here, buddy. But I obviously want to know, obviously, this year, Bryan announced on Collision that it's going to be his last year as a full-time wrestler. Started off with a banger at Okada at Wrestle Kingdom, so he started strong there. Yeah. I want to know, as a fan, is there maybe some other names you would love to see him face off in his final full-time year?
Yeah, so really, if I break it down, I'd love to see him and Joe do one more. I'd love to, just for the Ring of Honor fan in me, I'd love to see that. I would really want to see him push Strickland to a point where Strickland's probably got the belt on him, because I think Shane's had an absolute credible 2023, and I'd love to see him strap a rocket to him and get them fired up. And I'd love to see Bryan have one more run, maybe towards the belt. I'm not saying he'd take it, but again, him kind of having, this is my last year, see if I can go out on top, and Shane Strickland playing spoiler to that. That'd be great. And somebody I feel like Hangman Page doesn't get the recognition he deserves in AEW. So I feel like, I know he's won the championship in the past, but I felt like it wasn't the run he should have had. And I feel like he gets heated up and then he kind of goes cold a little bit. So I'd love, again, to, let's say there was a Strickland program, and if it was, and maybe him and Hangman did something, and maybe Hangman was to get the belt back, and if Bryan was to do that one last championship run, I'd love to see a main event feud with him and Hangman, or him and Strickland. I think they're the ones, because I think they're the hottest products in AEW at the moment.
Hey, look, take it. If I had cash on me, sadly, I'm skin. All I have is Bitcoin and Nectar points. I would give you all that and just be like, yeah, make it happen. Make it happen. But obviously, you mentioned Ring of Honor there, a very special brand, and I know it has a history with the UK as well. Immediately to my mind, Bryan Danielson, Nigel McGuinness at the Unified show with the Pure title and the Ring of Honor World title. Do you feel like Ring of Honor, even with the UK scene, has had an impact that some people don't appreciate?
I think wrestling moves so fast. Me and Wild Boar and Mark Andrews and Eddie Dennis were chatting about something the other day, and we were just talking about how fast, especially the internet, is kind of makes everything move. And I think there's stuff that's happening now in British wrestling that people don't realize where that came from. Like, I think the other day, Attack shared Pete Dunne's last match, and it was like this secret match that kind of, the event ended, and then Attack moved everyone to another hall in the same building where another ring was already set up, and it was Pete Dunne and Tyler Bates' last ever match, and it was a complete surprise. And they kind of had a 10-man tag, and it had all the Attack originals in that match and stuff like that. But a lot of people wouldn't even know where that match had taken place, and that's as early as, was it 2018, 2019? I think it happened. So that's as early as that, and some people wouldn't even know where that happened. But yeah, I think the same with Ring of Honor. I think people look at Ring of Honor now, a lot of new wrestling fans, and they might look at it as, oh, it's this smaller promotion that's, the sister company, or the lead into AEW. But it was the pioneer. It was the first super indie in America. Before PWG, you had Ring of Honor. If it wasn't for Ring of Honor, we wouldn't have the likes of Bryan Danielson. We wouldn't have Christopher Daniels. We wouldn't have Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe's Ring of Honor run is incredible. It's fantastic. There's this trilogy of matches with CM Punk and Samoa Joe which are absolutely incredible. So again, if people haven't seen them, they need to go and watch them. The fourth one they had at there's so much foreshadowing at the Wembley show when they had their fourth encounter. Well, I think it might be the fifth, but when they had that encounter and it kind of rounded everything off, there's so much foreshadowing and so much storytelling that's bled off that original trilogy that they had at Ring of Honor. So we wouldn't have had that. We wouldn't have had your Paul Londons wouldn't have made it to Ring of Honor. Sorry, wouldn't have made it to WWE if it wasn't for Ring of Honor. And then people like who've been forgotten as well, like Homicide, you said Nigel McGuinness as well, never really had his proper run and stuff like that. Like these people, like they created a brand of professional wrestling in America that has bled into Europe and bled all the way across the world. And I think that maybe it's forgotten a little bit now that AEW has become this super alternative that people don't look at Ring of Honor and what it was. But yeah, those early days, like Amazing Red versus Loki was the first independent wrestling match I ever really saw. And I remember it blowing me away. And I do think that if you're a fan of independent wrestling, people need to go back and they need to go have a look at that original Ring of Honor run from I think it's 2003 it comes out, and I think maybe there's up until about 2006, 2007, like branched into 2008. That's like some of that stuff is just absolute peak independent wrestling. People need to definitely seek that out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's sort of like a plant, it's got the stem, but all the branches come off and you get the things that we have just now. I've had Bobby Fish, obviously, on the show, and he's integral to that Ring of Honor period as well. Yep. Red Champion, TV title run. And he said that, when he was there, it felt like they were all planning a mind map, just making things and having showcases. Obviously, Adam Cole would do some stuff, Bullet Club. For you, Flash, do you feel like with Ring of Honor now, with its current legacy, do you feel like it can maybe get back to that kind of like influential age, or do you feel like with the current state of wrestling, it's just moving too fast, as you said?
I don't even think it's the current state of wrestling. I think to even look at wrestling itself, I think wrestling can evolve and change and be whatever people need it to be. But I do think that I don't really know where it exists in this ecosystem at AEW. Maybe I think maybe if it had a Ring of Honor roster and we didn't see these people on AEW, then maybe people would want to seek out Ring of Honor more, because then you could only see your favorites there. Maybe if it was kind of used and utilized like an early NXT was, where you've got people there and that's like your likes of your Wheeler Yutas and your Daniel Garcias when they're not being used on TV, or your Lee Moriarty's or your Nick Wayne's and stuff like that. These young people coming in, they could be Ring of Honor and they can kind of have the brush with the newer people and some of the older people that are there. And if you could only see those people there, I think it would be a real upside and a real selling point for Tony. Maybe even manage to get themselves a TV deal, something like that. But I think while you can see most of the stars that are Ring of Honor on AEW, and then the ones that aren't really focused on AEW sometimes show up on AEW as well, it kind of like waters down like, what's the selling point of Ring of Honor here? Why are we tuning in? Because I can see Blackpool Combat Club on AEW. If Brian was only doing tag team stuff on AEW, but he decided he was going to have this single run on Ring of Honor, that makes it unique. That makes it different. And I think that's something that maybe it's lost a little bit. It's lost its unique feel to it and why people should tune in. So I think it can exist. I just think they need to figure out what its personality and what its identity is.
Yeah, I'm definitely there, because I feel like its identity is very clouded at the moment. Obviously, like their world championships now in this Continental Crown mixed with the New Japan Strong and the AEW Continental Classic. So it feels like for the people in that roster, especially on the men's side, what's the main goal to get for it? Is it the TV title or the tags or the 6-man? Where do you think this? I mean, obviously, we're not TK, we're not got the fuzzy hair and the white claws at the desk. We don't know what's going on. So I want to know, Flash, do you feel like with this Continental Crown taking away the World Championship, what really is there to fight for?
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know what he's planning. I don't know where he's going with this. But I think when the belt went to Kingston, I was really excited about this. I love Eddie. I think Eddie's one of the best talkers, not just in professional wrestling, but of all time. I think he has this legitimacy about him. He has this realism that a lot of wrestlers don't have. I spoke about Homicide then. Like, Eddie was taught with Homicide. Eddie has that Homicide vibe about him. He has that vibe that, like, oh, at any point that Eddie Kingston could decide to kill somebody. Like, I know that sounds stupid, but you could. And that's a great tell, but you want to have these wrestlers that you believe are legit fighters. And yeah, some of them come to the ring and like, oh, this person's an athlete. But sometimes you want to have people come that go, this person's a madman. And I love that about Eddie. And I love Eddie, and me and Eddie get along. And Eddie's always been great to me, and he's a kind soul. But there's something about Eddie where you go, this man's been in legit fights. This man's had a fight for his life. And when they brought on Eddie, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, and if it was me, he's such a big favorite. I would have just said, I kind of would have just locked him away in Ring of Honor. I would have sorted out some house shows. I would have literally just done I would have tried to branch out and built that company on Eddie Kingston. I would have built it on Eddie Kingston. I would have made everyone want to see Eddie Kingston to Ring of Honor. And I think Kingston would have gone out of his way as well to try to prove a point and turn and say, right, okay, I'm going to double your figures. I'm going to triple this. And I think Kingston would have done that. I think those sort of people, when Aussie Open won the Ring of Honor belts, like if you'd said to me, right, okay, Eddie Kingston, Aussie Open. I know that Mark now, but again, if you had done 3 and you locked those 3 to Ring of Honor and you could only see them there, one of the best tag teams in the world, one of the best female wrestlers in the world, and one of the best /talkers /characters in the business, and you could only see them in Ring of Honor, like that's such a unique selling point. I'd want to tune in just to see that. So, but again, the fact is all mixed in and all these championships are all kind of in one pot. I don't know where it goes. I don't know, again, what the unique selling point of a Ring of Honor is if you can already see the champion every single week on TV and it's not Ring of Honor.
Fair points indeed. And I mean, who knows what 2024 could hold for the brand? Maybe something new, maybe something spicy, a new era. But as they say, time will tell and we'll never know. But obviously, another company I want to talk about, one close to home, who I've had the co-owner of the show on, Progress. Hell of a company that is truly loved as well. And I know you've appeared on a few chapters as well. One I got to talk about is someone who's featured at Wrestle Kingdom this year, Zack Saber Jr. Used to facing off at chapter 29. Ooh, Zack's a crazy boy, I must say. Definitely a technical man. I mean, talk about it. Facing Zack, someone who's now faced Bryan Danielson as well, technical wizard. I gotta know, what's it like facing Zack Saber Jr.?
So I've been very fortunate that I've wrestled Zack, I think, on, I want to say 4 occasions. That was the 4th and final time I've wrestled Zack, the one that was at Progress. Very, very lucky that when I was breaking out early doors, we were lucky to get in. We remember watching him and Brian clip package, I think we saw from a place called Triple X in Coventry, the first time they wrestled each other, small little social club. And our brains went, okay, one of the Ring of Honor mainstays, I don't know if he was a champion at the time, but one of the Ring of Honor mainstays, Bryan Danielson, is in this small little social club in Coventry. We need to be in this. Like me, Pete Dunne, Mark Andrews, like Pete Dunne and like the rest of them, I managed to get their way in. And then me and Wild Boar, when we came into wrestling, like we need to be in there as well. And we were very lucky that when we started coming into this, then Saber was a mainstay at this place, and we got to kind of pick Saber's brains. We got to kind of be in, like, there's one match which is like small. It was from a small social club in Coventry. The match is myself versus Pete Dunne versus Wild Boar versus Zack Saber Jr. And I think we wrestled in front of 30 people. And I think the owner of the promotion put something out recently and was like this was done in front of 30 people. Imagine what this would draw nowadays. And I thought that was quite lovely when I saw that. But yeah, very, very lucky to sit under that learning tree of Zack. And he's somebody I consider a friend as well. Gone out many nights out on him, and that man can drink and party as well as he can wrestle, let me tell you, which is great. But yeah, Zack always brings it. I think what Zack has gone on to become and what he is now is a very different animal to what he was when we wrestled in 2016. That's mental to think that's 8 years ago, nearly a decade ago. I think he's really kind of sharpened it up. I think at the time he was considered one of the best technical wrestlers in the world, and now he is considered the best technical wrestler in the world. He's somebody that a lot of people can look at and go, okay, what's everyone doing? And Zack always went and did the complete opposite. So while everyone was going high flying and they were going hard, they were going crazier spots and neck bumps and head drops, Zack went to the mat and Zack was strikes. So Zack went and looked at what he enjoyed doing and how do I make this applicable for me and this. And then on top of it all is Zack's not the biggest guy, but Zack is lean as hell. Zack works on his flexibility. Zack works on his conditioning. So again, it's not about being the biggest and the most muscly person. It's about looking like an athlete. And that's what I think Zack did. Zack was like, took this style that nobody else was doing. He made it exciting again, because again, a lot of people were looking at those British wrestling matches and maybe people thinking they were a little bit boring. Zack made it exciting, made it fast paced. And then Zack on top of it then kind of changed his entire look, because he went from being this kind of I don't use the term skinny fat, but he was at one point, and now he's this absolute shredded machine. And I remember when all us younger lads saw that transition, that change, and he showed up and looked incredible. That was like the kick up the arse of, okay, this is what we need to do as well. And yeah, like being in it with Zack is incredible. He's got creative ideas. He hits hard. He's got a hell of a gas tank on him. Always brings the fight, and it's always a learning experience when you're in there with him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just listening to them talk as well. And, you know, I remember him calling out Rishi Sunak, and I was like, this is my guy. I respect him for what he's doing there. Good man there. But also, I know as well, you mentioned Pete Dunne and obviously Mark Andrews, who we had on the show. I know you three would feature in a Progress show, Chapter 66 in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I mean, a hell of a thing to do as well. I've always wondered, though, like, the way wrestling fans are, do you feel like they've got different kind of cultures and what they expect from, like, States fans to UK fans? I wonder your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I do. So me and Mark have gone out, and we've gone out to TNA Impact this year, and we've had a hell of a reception. And I do think America being so big, I think there's pockets of good wrestling in America, little pockets, and then there's a lot of space where there's undercurrents, or there's smaller promotions that haven't really got these stars yet, or the moment those stars start to break out, they kind of picked up and they're swooped off to the bigger promotions. So I think that because it's so big, it's not as spoilt, whereas like British wrestling fans, they are a little spoilt, and I don't mean that as a knock to them. We've worked super hard to create this scene here, and this current, like the training schools that are coming through at the moment, and the people coming through, like me and Wild Boar were talking the other day, and there's some people out there now that are at a level of professional wrestling which is really, really high. And we were like, they've had 150 to 200 matches. And that blows my mind when, like, me and the Wild Boar and Mark like approaching are approaching or have now succeeded 1,000 matches. Like, that absolutely blows our mind that this standard, and they're only 1/10 of our reps. Like, that's crazy. But then because on top of this island is so small, the public transport system is so good, we're able to fly very cheaply and stuff like that. Or we were able to. You could literally go and spend an entire weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and travel no more than 2 hours a day, and be at an independent wrestling show that was stacked from top to bottom. If you travel 9 hours sometimes in the States, you're still in the same state. And sometimes these promotions only have, like, these states only have one promotion. Like, we were in Canada the other week, and we traveled, I think it was like 7 hours down, and we were still in the same province. Like, that's mental. That's absolutely crazy. If like this, like where I am in the Midlands at the moment, if I travel 7 hours up, I'm falling off the country. Like, and again, think about how many different promotions I would hit on that drive up. I'd have to go past Manchester, I'd have to go past Liverpool, I'd have to go past Newcastle, I'd have to go past Carlisle, I'd have to go into Edinburgh, there's Glasgow. Like, there's so much just on that 4 hour drive. So yeah, I do think that it's different in America, because I think they haven't had, it's so vast that they don't have as much wrestling all in one populated place. So I think that they aren't as spoilt in regards to what they see in person. So it was nice that when we were out there, me and Mark, that we were kind of able to go out there and wrestle and showcase what we could do. And the fans were just so receptive to it, because they hadn't seen a lot of the stuff we had done before, a lot of stuff we do. And we were rated very, very highly. Like I said a few times, like, me and Mark this year were the highest rated free agent tag team in the world. And for a team that kind of a lot of people were buzzing about or talking about at the beginning of 2023, that like blew our mind. But again, one of those things I think is the fact that we were stateside, kind of flying our flag and having bangers, and the fans were just so receptive to what we were doing, that we were able to be utilized properly and pushed, because we were able to capitalize on the fact that we were the shiny new toys, and people were really excited about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, mate. I mean, you definitely brought the culture to the whole States. There's a wee play on words. I'll shoot myself later for that terrible pun. Yeah. But obviously, I want to come back to the UK as well, because obviously, as I mentioned before, I wasn't a fan during this time period, but the whole United Kingdom Championship tournament starting up that would lead into NXT UK. I know for the first tournament, I believe you were injured and you were only able to appear as a fan, if I'm correct. Yes.
Yeah, I was in the audience for day 2. there's a clip. I'm stood next to my good friend Jim Lee, who's the guy who founded Attack Pro, and I think if people can find the clip, me and him are in the crowd, and I'm sat there or stood there, whatever, in the crowd, and I'm still like this because I think I'm about 2 or 3 weeks out of a sling. So my brain is still wanting to hold my arm like this. So I'm like watching the show. My arm is still like this, even though it's not in a sling. So yeah, I was still watching as a fan of that day. So I got to see Pete and Mark and Tyler and Pete in the final, which was great.
Wow, for always being this friendship of a bond, seeing those guys there in the ring, having this moment on the stage for the WWE in the United Kingdom, that's like a hell of a moment for you, mate, right?
Oh, it was incredible. Like I'll tell you, like I cried that night, and I was a bit like, oh my god, this is incredible. And I was injured, and that entire span of that timeout, it's easy to look back on it now and talk about how I was feeling. Like there was moments of jealousy because I worked so hard and I was on the shelf and I was seeing a lot of my friends do stuff that I wish I could do. Of course, I was so proud and we knew for ages that Pete Dunne was one of the best in this country and one of the best in the world. And we knew Tyler was this prodigy. And it was so good to just see it showcased and prove that night that like the people who thought we were just those flippy indie kids and didn't know what we were talking about, like the biggest company in the world, had came here and gone, no, these are the stars. And it was kind of a bit like can I swear on you?
Yeah, of course. It's a
I was like, it was a little bit like, fuck you. Like we were right. We were right. So that was great. But of course, I was a little bit like, I wish I was there and I wish I had that or whatever. But as I look back on it now, it's like they got signed and I had a lovely moment that night. Like I went and watched it and it was great. And I went to the hotel afterwards and got to spend time with like Pete and Tyler and Mark and all stuff. And I remember like kind of like I was there just as a friend, and then like I'd met him maybe once before, whatever. And William Regal called me over and was like, I want to have a little chat with me and stuff like that. Introduced me to Robbie Brookside, and I was asking how my shoulder was, and I was like, yeah, I'm like, should be back in the next month or two or whatever. And he's like, cool, let me know. He's like, this will all be blowing up soon, and maybe you could be a part of it, whatever. And I was buzzing off that, and I thought that was great. Of course, little did we know that like, what was that, 2017? It would take another, 14, 15 months for that to happen. But that them lot being picked up when they did was a very good thing for me, because they got picked up and I didn't get picked up. And at the time, I was probably looking at it quite upset. But if I had been picked up, I wouldn't have been able to do stuff like Peter OG Battle of Los Angeles that year. Like I got to appear at Peter OG like 4 or 5 times and have like a great weekend there, like, and smash it. And I think that kind of allowed me then, when I walked into that second UK tournament, allowed me to walk in with a bit of star power and a bit of name power behind me. And that kind of influenced how far and how I was treated then that first tournament and how I was showcased. So that was really good. I could have came in on that first tournament and maybe I would have gone out in the first round. But yeah, that first tournament was an eye-opener to me. And I've seen some of the tweets I put out since then and stuff saying about like, we've been the best kept secret in the world. And now the whole world knows that British wrestling is the best wrestling in the world. And yeah, I was so proud of everybody that night, from the people who would just kind of do the dark matches to the people who were in the tournament final. And it really lit a fire under me for my return then, about 2 months later.
Of course, man. You would return in style, obviously, with the second United Kingdom tournament as well. I really want to know, because obviously I've had a lot of wrestlers on, some mostly for like family shows, local shows, and we've not had like the grand stage of the biggest wrestling company in the world. And knowing that, hey, look, I'm on the WWE network in this kind of tournament, was there ever a moment you stood back, looked yourself in the mirror and thought, this is what I've been working for?
Yeah, it's a weird one. I remember, I think I had a tryout in 2018, and I remember Pete had his when I was out injured, and I asked him how it went, and Pete was like, you big it up in your head, and then you get there, and he was like, in the tryouts, he's like, you just realize it's what you've kind of been training for. Like, if you're a good wrestler, he said they're easy. And I remember doing the tryout and found the tryout quite easy, quite nice, enjoyed it. But when I got to the WWE and I did 205 Live, and then I did the UK tournament, if I'm totally honest, I feel like I wasn't ready. And maybe it wasn't the case of my skill set and stuff like that, but I feel like maybe like I let my nerves get the better of me, and I was always second guessing, always second doubting, and overthinking little bits and pieces. And I was saying this to Mark the other day. I feel like only this year, well, the year just gone, 2023, have I really felt like I'm at home in a professional wrestling ring, which is mad to think, considering I've probably been doing this now for 12, 13 years. But I get so much like performance anxiety when it comes to like putting pressure on myself, and that kind of in turn then allows me not to really enjoy it, or not to really. I'm always second guessing, always thinking, I'm always acting, not reacting to the moment. So something could happen and I'm already kind of trying to do what I thought about earlier on. Whereas now, again, maybe this is another reason why me and Mark were so successful this year. I think Mark's always had that ability to go out there and just absorb the moment and smash it. Whereas I think that's something I lacked. And then this year I've been able to really kind of embrace that. And maybe that's why I've been better. But yeah, that first, I said this before, like that first 6 months in WWE, I felt like I was drowning. I really did. I really felt like I was. I wish I could go back now and kind of tell myself, hey, just enjoy these moments. But I did. I think there was like, I had a match in 205 Live and I got busted open and felt like I didn't have a really good match. And then I had a match with James Drake in the opening rounds of the tournament at Download, and I kind of like, we fluffed one or two things and I kind of came away not feeling great about it. Me and Devlin was fun. We had a good little bit, but I still wasn't very confident. I had the match with Zach Gibson, and that was the one I enjoyed. I enjoyed that one with Gibson. I was like, okay, I'm finding my feet here. And then when NXT UK started, I think maybe it was a couple of months gap, and then I fell back into that rhythm of doubting myself again. But those first 6 months, I was definitely in my head a lot, really overthinking it, and I wish I could go back and tell myself to just enjoy it. But yeah, it wasn't so much of, oh, I'm here. It was more a case of, oh shit, I'm here. This is what you wanted. Like now now it's sink or swim. And for a good couple of months, I felt like I was sinking. And maybe they saw that, and that's why they decided to put me and Mark as a team. And luckily for me, that's something that's benefited us both, and it's really worked out.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. And before I talk about, what the announcement of NXT UK starting up and going on to do the takeovers and then the success that you, Mark, would have, I saw an amazing picture on your Instagram of you and Wild Boar. Top part, you as kids, and then at the bottom part, using suits being signed to the company and saying, two lads from the Valleys went and got jobs with the biggest wrestling company in the world. To know that you get to do this with your friends, like as you mentioned, Mark and Pete Dunne, getting to be in the biggest company in the world, representing not only the UK scene but Welsh wrestling as well. Would you say that's maybe one of the biggest accolades in your career?
So I remember being on a coach with Eddie Dennis. There was a few of us, and when you say that, I get a bit choked up about it. And Eddie said this wonderful thing, and I think the older I get, the more I realize it. Eddie went, when I was younger, I thought my dream was to be a professional wrestler. And he said, now I'm older, I realize my dream is to be a professional wrestler with all my friends. So Eddie turned and said, like, he's been on shows in the past, and he's gone and flew out here and flew out there, and we've had time where he's gone to the PC and stuff like that. And I had a bit where me and him should have gone out to the PC, and Eddie hurt his arm the day before, and I ended up going out, and I was out there on my own for a little bit, and I was in classes on my own, and the people were very, very nice, and they were very welcoming and stuff like that. But there's a big difference to being on shows where I can sit in the back. And again, how many people get to say this? Like my wife says this to me all the time. She was like, how many people get to say that they get to live their dream and do the dream job they ever want to do? But not only when they do that, but the people sat next to them, like your Eddie Dennis's, your Mark Andrews, your Pete Dunnes. These are people now that I've known since 2010. So I've known them now for 14 years. They are my best friends in professional wrestling and my best friends in general. But then on top of that, I met Wild Boar when I was 14 years old. I met Brendan White when I was 11 years old. And I get to travel the country and sit in the back and chat and watch wrestling and plan and put stuff together and be creative with my childhood friends. Like so many people only get to stay with their childhood friends and be friends with them if they stay in their small village and don't really do anything. Other people leave their village and go off and chase their dreams, and they never see their friends again. That's how it is. So to be these lucky people that get to live their dreams and get to do what they've always wanted to do, but they also get to do it with their best friends surrounding them and getting to enjoy that, and also getting to see them succeed and them kind of smash it. Like this year, Brendan White was on SmackDown and got thrown into the guardrails, going to the steps by Roman Reigns. And there's like an amazing moment at my wedding. He was one of my best men at my wedding, where he turns around and says, like, to my left, he goes, Flash was, well, he says, Gab is one of the best wrestlers to ever come out of this country, one of the best wrestlers to ever come out of Wales, signed to the WWE. Wild Boar, Mike Hitchman is also one of those. But he goes, but I main evented SmackDown with the Tribal Chief, so you all need to. I need to ask you all one question. Is that question, when are you all going to acknowledge me? And a big pop of everybody at the wedding. But again, that's mental to. And some of my wife's uncles came up to me and he was like, "It's so crazy that this small patch of like 5 to 10 miles, and it is more like maybe it's 15 at a push, out of this small little valleys, literally has come Adrian Street, Flash Morgan Webster, Wild Boar Mike Hitchman, Brendan White, Danny Jones, Tegan Knox. Like every single one of those has been featured on WWE TV, and it's in a 10 to 15 mile radius, and it's not a big city. They are small mining towns. That's just mental. A population of 3 million people, and in the space of 10 miles, 15 miles, 5 people go on to work for the biggest company in the world. That's mind-boggling to me. And then when you factor in the fact that along the way, when we did branch out, we met Eddie Dennis on one of my first training sessions, met Mark Andrews at one of my first training sessions, and now we're still friends. Pete Dunne was the first person who got me a booking outside of Wales. Wouldn't have had that booking if it wasn't for Pete. Still best friends with him. Like, mental. That sort of stuff's crazy. Like, when people talk about, is this a simulation? Is this not real? That's the sort of stuff that makes me think that maybe we're plugged into something. And because it's all a bit too good for me.
Fuck, man, I'm going to have to pull out the time and see I mean, I will say, when they make your autobiography and the story of you guys' journey, it's going to be a fucking belter of a movie. I would fucking pay to see that, my friend. God damn, wow, wholesome shit, and I love to see it. And I do want to talk about NXT UK starting up. I remember, there was the announcement, and then it's basically saying, like, this is now going to be the biggest thing going for the UK. For yourself, hearing that NXT UK was going to start up, what were the thoughts going out your mind?
Oh, this is great. I was like, bloody hell, there's a clear path. Like, I started in 2010, and my biggest goal, I thought my absolute maximum goal was, maybe you'll get to PWG. Not you will get to PWG, or I'd like to get to PWG. Maybe you'll get to PWG. And that was my goal. That was my ultimate goal. I didn't think I'd get a tryout. I didn't think I'd get signed. I didn't think I'd be the first Welshman to hold gold in WWE next to Mark Andrews. I didn't think I'd hold the TNA belts that have been held by the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys. Like, I didn't think that was possible. Like, to me, I'm this small, skinny, pale Welsh lad. I was like, okay, maybe I could get to do PWG. That'd be pretty cool. So when NXT UK became a thing, in my head I was going, how good will this be that there will be a crop of talent coming through now that can start at a training school and go, okay, how do I get to WWE? Oh, here's the path. And yeah, when that got announced, I was like, this is great. Like, there's now a clear path from start to finish. If you want to go do Japan, like, people knew how you get there. Like, you got your F Pro, you got your way in and stuff like that. But trying to get to WWE, it was just, hey, try to get a tryout. Hopefully they'll sign you. Now there's a clear path. That was to us, that was great. Like, that's what a lot of people get into wrestling because they watched WWE. We thought this was fantastic.
You guys did it indeed. Obviously, I got to talk about the NXT Takeover Cardiff where you guys won the tag team titles, you and Mark Andrews. You getting the pin and knowing that you get the tag titles, you get your side plates on. I really want to discuss the emotion of that because, as a fan, we love seeing our wrestlers win. But when you're a wrestler and you get the pin, you hear the 1, 2, 3, you're the first Welsh champions, you and Mark. You're in the history books of WWE for life. I mean, how do you describe that, bud?
There's like a lot of backstory to this. So, like, we heard a rumbling that there was going to be like a takeover, and we heard it could have been Cardiff, and it might have been Mortarpoint, and we were just like, oh my god, this must be great. And then we started hearing rumblings that they were going to pop us in this tag match or whatever. At one point, I think there was talks that it was just going to be Gallus versus Vets. And then there was rumblings and talks about, okay, we might make it a triple threat, and this will be great. And then I think maybe it's 12 weeks out. I think it's maybe it's about 16 weeks out from this happening. I do an independent show down in Cardiff, and I dislocated my shoulder, and I'm like, oh, and it's out. It's out. I'm to the point where I'm like, I might have tore up a lot. And last time I just hit my shoulder properly, I was out for 11 months. So I was like, oh, okay, we are 16 weeks out from what potentially could be the biggest show to ever be in Cardiff. Okay, I've screwed this up. And then I kind of like, okay, how long will this be? How long will this take? When can I be back? And like, it was cutting fine. It was really cutting fine. I think maybe I had to be cleared. I think I could be cleared in 12 weeks, and or was I could be cleared in 14 weeks or something like that, or 12 to 14 weeks. And then I think I had to have a match on the 13th week at one of the tapings because we needed to set up the tag match. So it was like, because they need to know, they couldn't put me in the takeover show if they didn't know the shoulder was good. So they need to test that out as well. So it was like, I had a match with Mark Coffey, and we got through that pretty good. And then we got into the match. But that night we were going into it. I know Mark was super psyched and Mark was super buzzing about it. But like, I'm backstage, I'm proper worried about this. I'm thinking in my show, like, this shoulder could come out. This shoulder could be halfway through this match, the match in which we are going to win the WWE champ. We're going to win these championships. This shoulder could come out. I have to be taken backstage. We don't have this moment. So when the 3 count happens, the relief is overwhelming so much. And I talked about it, kind of like that anxiety and feeling out to my depth. I remember feeling it a little bit. I was an absolute mess the day building up to that show. When we walk out and the music hits and the crowd erupts, at that point, I think it was the most at home I'd ever felt. Like, and in my head, I thought to myself, if the shoulder's going to come out, let's just enjoy this until it happens. There's not, like, I could come all the way through this and I could hate every second of it because I'm worried and the shoulder might not come out, and then I've just ruined this moment. So in my head, I was like, let's just enjoy every moment of this, just in case the shoulder does come out. And at least I've enjoyed it up until that moment. I've had this. So when that 3 count happens, and I realize we're now in the ring and we're in front of our friends, our family, our countrymen, the first Welsh champions in WWE history in Wales, at the time as well, the biggest live event to ever come out of Wales. Of course, that's gone on to be changed since then, but at the time it was. And for me as well, like, the moment I wanted to be a wrestler, there's 2 moments here, which again, I go back to the simulation thing of like, maybe this can't be real. It's 2 bits here. So growing up, so when I first decided I wanted to be a wrestler was Eddie Guerrero versus Brock Lesnar, No Way Out. Eddie Guerrero wins the championship. Eddie Guerrero is in the crowd with his family celebrating. And I remember seeing that, and I remember thinking, I want to do this. This is why I want to do this moment right there. So that's the first bit. When we win the belts, we're there with the belts, and then the referee walks up to them and goes, they said you can get in the crowd. And before they even finishes that sentence, me and Mark are in that crowd. There's a moment where I think Mark loses me. That's how far I've jumped back into the crowd. And I just think to myself, this is a perfect full circle moment. Perfect full circle moment. Because I wanted to become a professional wrestler when I saw Eddie Guerrero win that belt in front of his friends and family at WWE, and he gets in the crowd. And I get to do the exact same thing and make history as the first Welsh champion. But the only thing that could make this more full circle moment, the only 2 things that makes more full circle moment, is that Wild Boar Mike Hitchman, who I started with in his back garden, is backstage watching it. That's the first one. And then the other one is that when growing up and I told everyone to be a professional wrestler, everywhere I went, people would go, like Adrian Street. You want to be a wrestler like Adrian Street? Because he's the most famous Welsh wrestler of all time. And Adrian Street was in the audience watching that night. The man who came from the same village I did, who's now passed away this year, was in the crowd and came up to us and got a photo with me and Mark after we won. Like, you can't write it. Like, if I said to you, we're going to write this moment right now, it would be too far-fetched. Winning the championships in our hometown in front of our friends and family, 14 weeks after a dislocation and injury, with one of your best mates by your side, with your other best mates backstage watching it, with your replicating what you saw on TV that made you want to become a wrestling fan and want to become a wrestler. And then the man who pioneered the way for all Welsh wrestling is also in the audience, and he's from your town. Like, that right there, it's just magic.
Fuck.
Yeah, I know, it was mental.
Fuck, I don't think you can even write. Fucking hell, Jesus, fucking, oh God, Jesus, fuck, you've lost me for words now. I'm bamboozled with just how all the pieces of that puzzle.
Yeah, I know. And then again, me and Mark talk about this. It's like, and the theme music for that show was Mark Andrews' band. Like yeah, like that again. That's another layer to this. But it's like, no, now it's too far. Now you've what it was. No, now you've gone too far with this imaginary story. But it's not imaginary. It's real.
I mean, you mentioned obviously the picture of Adrian Street as well. But you obviously got a picture of your titles with Triple H as well, and you get the old certified Triple H point. Like obviously getting to meet both of those with your tag titles as well. That's, I mean, hey, me and Adrian Street and Triple H as well. You know, when you went back the curtain as well, and obviously, you know, was Hunter there, or was it Shawn Michaels there, or anyone to greet you when you got back, and it was sort of like that validation from a higher up? Yeah,
so we came through the curtain, and this is quite funny. I think we came through the curtain, and I think like I think it was like I want to say there was a Regal or somebody wanted to maybe have a chat with us because we came through, and Adrian being a little bit older and not really kind of knowing what is done, just kind of barges past everybody, gives a camera to somebody, goes take a picture, which is really funny. So that's really funny stuff. But after that, then we had the picture, whatever, with him, which is lovely. And then Regal comes up to us and says, I know, like, because he said, I know you guys are kind of like, you've been there killing it. I know you've had like your ups and downs and stuff like that. And I know that it doesn't always, he's like, the sun doesn't always shine on you. But when it does shine, he was like, make hay. That's what he was saying. And this is your moment right now. So like, that was great. And then Sean came up to us and said it was fantastic. And then Trips kind of grabbed us, said it was amazing and stuff like that, and said enjoy tonight. And his biggest thing for us is at the time as well, we were going head to head with a New Japan show. And after we'd finished the show, and everyone was like, Tyler and Walter had this incredible match as well. He just kind of turns to all of us. He goes, "All I've got to say, guys, is I think you smashed it, and they've got to go fucking follow that." That's what he said. I was like, "That's great." So, but yeah, that was amazing.
Oh, yeah, and obviously, and NXT UK itself, I think, from people I've had on, especially the younger wrestlers like a Leon Cage, even Thompson, and many others, they hold that brand, especially in their hearts, with how much you guys work for it. So honestly, do be proud of that, because you guys have left a mark on the younger generation. And one match I want to talk about in particular was on NXT UK. You and Mark versus The Hunt in a street fight. Knowing that you guys were all there growing up and having this match, I want to know, do you think with this street fight, is it a bit more like a precious moment to you out of your whole NXT UK career?
It's a hard one, because again, like, the whole build up to it was something we were really proud of, and we'd kind of like pitched these ideas, and I can't really go into lots of the ideas we've pitched because I feel like a lot of them are left on the table, and hopefully these are things that will go on to be done either on the independents or down the line or whatever. So that's something we'd like to kind of look at and do. But it would, again, I don't know if you've gone back and watched it, but like, it's not in front of the crowd, which is harder. Those empty arena stuff, I learned a lot, and I think I became a really good wrestler in those moments, and learned how to sell out and put stuff together where there's no reaction. I think that really helped me when crowds came back. But like, Wild Boar was supposed to be in that match, and I think maybe it's like 2 months before, whatever, or a month before, he tears his ACL. So that's the one thing I think I was always gutted about, really, was we only got, me and him only ever got to wrestle each other once in a WWE ring, and that was in like a 4-way tag, and in that match he tore his ACL. So like, that's the one thing I wish I could go back and change. If I could have like one match with him or a tag team match with them or whatever, that would be like in front of a crowd or in a WWE ring, that would be something I'd like to change. So like, yeah, at the time it meant a lot, because I feel like me, Mark, Eddie, and Primate were all in the best shape of our lives and stuff like that, firing on all cylinders. We wish crowds were there, but at the time we were the only like kind of promotion putting on shows, because we were all in COVID and stuff like that. So we were really happy with it. And again, getting to share the ring with Eddie, only time I got to share the ring with Eddie in a WWE ring, which is again great to do that. And it was a great match. So that was fantastic. So that meant a lot. I think it would have meant a lot more potentially if like Wild Boar had been involved in it. But that's the only downside to that. But yeah, we had a lot of fun. And again, we still got a lot of ideas that we didn't really fully kind of capitalize on, and hopefully we can capitalize down the line.
Exactly. Who knows? Maybe we could see you and Mark, Boar, and Eddie Dennis in a TLC match in the future.
Oh.
I mean, that's get the Ticketmaster, well, not Ticketmaster, Eventbrite. Ticketmaster is shit. Avoid that with like the plague. Let's put it to the side. But we want to have Mark on, and we talk about the good old group Subculture and how that was all formed. Now, Mark gave his side of the story, but I would love to get your side of the story, Flash, on Subculture's formation with you, Mark, and Danny.
Now, I don't know what Mark said, so I'm just going to say it was all my idea, and I think it's really great. And they give me just in case I just put there. I think me and Mark we've been put together as a team, and it's one of these. So Mark had teamed in the past with Eddie. He teamed in the past with Pete. I teamed in the past with a few different people. Wild Boar was one of the people I teamed with, and I always say that planning, putting stuff together backstage, whatever, you know, creatively trying to put stuff together. Mark would always say that him and Eddie it was quite easy. There's similar taste in this, similar taste in that, and same with me and Boar. Really, he's quite laid back. I'm quite opinionated. I like to kind of take charge of situations. So he's very easy to just lay back and let it kind of go ahead. But in ring, now me and Boar had some good tag team matches, and I know Mark and Eddie had some great tag team matches as a team. But me and Mark, when we first were a team and trying to figure this out, we butted heads a lot. And I think the reason we butted heads a lot is because we are very opinionated. Both of us were very headstrong, and we struggled with that a little bit. But the one thing that never ever was difficult was we'd get in that ring and it just clicked. The ideas we had, we thought about wrestling the same way, structures, everything, like creativity, it all clicked. And this year has been that absolute, like some of the matches you put together and on short notice and stuff like that, we've had banger after banger. And it is just the fact that we just think about wrestling the same. And me and him say to each other, we just have this chemistry. And now, over the course of last year, we have figured out how to work with each other outside of the ring. And it's a lot easier. But we were together as this team. We'd won the belts. And again, I think we've been put together as this mismatched tag team that they thought would be cool for a tag team tournament. And then we had a banger with the vets. And they went, okay, maybe we can revisit this match with the vets. And then we had another banger with the vets. And then Takeover Cardiff came along. And we were kind of fan favorites. And they liked us. And they went, okay, maybe we'll give them a little bit of a run. And I think, if I'm honest, from what I heard, the plan was we win the belts. We'd lose the belts the next day. That was one of the plans they had. We did so well at Takeover Cardiff. They gave us an extended run. And after we lost the belts at in Essex, I do believe we lost them to Gallus. We were backstage, and Shawn Michaels came up to us, and Shawn Michaels was like, "Guy, I think we were maybe a bit deflated, and we weren't deflated because we lost the belts. We were deflated more because we felt the match was good, but the crowd was quite tired, and we were a bit like, oh, we wish we got a better reaction off the crowd." But Shawn Michaels thought we were quite down because we just dropped the belts. And Shawn came up to us and gave us loads of a chat and was like, you guys have smashed this. This was a small little opportunity that we thought could just be one little thing. And you guys have ran with it. And it's been incredible. And we're going to keep this tag team going. And then all of a sudden, about 2 weeks later, we find out we're in the Dusty Classic. And then they put us in this tag match then with Riddle and Pete. And we have what people consider the best match in the Dusty Classic tournament as well. So that was great. And we just came to be on this roll. And then again, on that as well, we did Monday Night Raw just before that as well. So we'd made a buzz, and they were like, let's bring this British tag team in and do some stuff with Viking Raiders. And we had a good little 5-minute banger with them. So that was nice. And I think we did that. And then COVID shut us down and we came back. And I think it was very much like, so we've had this team that's already won the tag belts. They were never really a proper team. They never really had a name. We were never really kind of pushed to this commodity. So me and Mark were like, well, we need to kind of brand this and we need to push this. Mm-hmm. And we spoke about it and we tried to push it. And I think there was they didn't kind of understand what it was. And then me and Mark were like, okay, if we aren't going to get pushed to this team towards the belts and we aren't going to win the belts, let's try to create a team or a group that's different to anything else that's happening on the product. Let's maybe push ourselves where we can do intergender matches and we can do mixed tags, and we can have a group where we're always together, but we can do a singles run and somebody else can do a singles run, but we're always a unit. And Mark had a hand in training Danny, and I'd had a little bit of a hand in training, not as much as them, but again, a little bit, and kind of getting her on chaos shows and helping her at Dragon Pro and stuff like that. So when we were thinking about putting this together, we thought about the Hardy Boys, and we thought about Hardy Boys and Lita, and how it never felt like it was the Hardy Boys and Lita. It just felt like it was Team Extreme. That's what we liked. That we liked that feeling, and we thought maybe we have this with Danny Luna. So we suggested it, and we suggested the name Subculture, and they asked us why, and asked us all these reasons of why it had to be together, and it had to be a reason, there had to be this, there had to be that. And we wanted to just say to them, it's just cool, just let us do it, because again, like sometimes you don't need to explain everything. But they wanted it, and we did it. We jumped through the hoops, as they said. We gave them the reasons. We shot these vignettes, and it helped, and people get behind it. And Mark, being as creative as he is, Mark created this great logo and this great music video for us. He spoke to his band member Matt, and they worked with each other and created this banger of entrance music. And then we kind of took stuff from here and took stuff from there, and eventually then created this look that we feel, if it had been in front of fans, if it had been on these big NXT UK shows that we'd had before, we believe it would have been super over. Unfortunately, a majority of it was done in a BT Studios in front of nobody, and then towards the end it was done in front of 20 or 30 people when they started letting people in, and then of course the brand kind of dissolved and went away. And we always thought this works. Like we had a bang, like me and Danny had a banger with Ginny and Joe Connors. Me and Mark had a banger with Pretty Deadly coming out of this. Danny Luna had this great one with Miko Satomura. We were all killing it. I had one of my best runs as when I was trying to wrestle the big men and stuff like that. Some of my best stuff before I got injured again. And then of course, unfortunately, from there, then I get injured. Mark gets injured, and then I think maybe we get released. Is he released? Oh, I'm not quite sure. But that happens, and then Danny gets hurt, or one way or the other. I can't remember which way it was. But unfortunately, everyone seemed to get hurt at the same time. But we all remember always just thinking, this is a great idea. We've got everything here. We've got a good brand. We've got good music. We've got good entrance music. We've got a banging entrance. We've got all these things. We just need this opportunity. And when it dissolved, we kind of all left with a bit of a chip on our shoulder and wanted to prove that it was as good as we thought it was. And I think this 2023 has been proof that they shouldn't have let us go.
Hey, absolutely indeed, man. You all three absolutely killed. And I do want to touch upon NXT UK shutdown. You know, as I say, nothing lasts forever, but it was a shame to see, because I could see how many people loved it as well. And knowing NXT UK was shutting down when you first heard that news, and then it was going to be this supposed NXT Europe that was going to happen last year that never did. Looking back, what memories do you hold on NXT UK and the thoughts of the shutdown as well in itself?
Well, it has to be like the biggest ones for me really would be like the NXT UK Cardiff. That was a big one. Kind of NXT. We opened NXT Blackpool as well. We opened Takeover Blackpool. Me and Mark had this banger with Imperium, and I think that was the moment where like Hunter and Sean realized they had this team that could smash it. I remember coming backstage after that match, and Mustache Mountain and Grizzly and Vets looked at us, knowing that they were the next match on the card when the show opened, and they were like, "You absolute bastards!" Because we'd had this killer match, stand ovation off the crowd. So that was great. So I love that moment. And then we had that ladder match where me and Mark jumped off the ladder. And then we also did Dusty Classic as well at NXT. So those are the real moments for us. As for the being released, I think it was just the timing of it all. Like, I'd been injured and I'd been working my ass off to try to get back because this Clash in the Castle show had been announced, and there was talks and rumors that maybe Mark would have a dark match. Maybe me and Mark would be tagging in this dark match if I was cleared. And there was, I know Pete was potentially pushing it, and him and it might have end up being like Mark and me versus Ridge and him, and that would have been absolutely great. And we were like, bloody hell, this would be great. Like, we get to take off Principality Stadium, which we never would have ever thought in a million years we were going to be able to do. But it was just the timing of it all. I think at the time I'd gone through some contract stuff as well, where I think I'd had that incredible year where we were in front of the crowds and we had done Dusty and all sort of stuff, and then we hit COVID, and COVID was a really hard time, I think, especially after wrestling in front of no fans. And just in general, it's just a very exhausting thing. And then just as it looked like we were getting fans back, I dislocated my shoulder again, and I had to get the bigger surgery, which is now sorting my shoulder out good and proper, touch wood. But then I felt like a bit exhausted by it all, because that second rehab was the hardest rehab I've ever had to do. I think I caught COVID and a really bad bout of COVID during that year out as well of me. So Like, I think I was just really exhausted by it all and didn't really know what we were working towards anymore because we weren't seemingly going back towards these big shows. And I thought, well, am I going to re-sign with WWE? And in the end, I did, because I have a wife and I have a mortgage. And I thought, well, since I'm out injured, maybe the best thing to do is to re-sign and keep a roof over my head while I can figure out my options. And then I got myself cleared. Look, I potentially Clash the Castle might be a possibility, and then we get released. But it was more the fact that I just look at like that happened, and we look at Clash the Castle and how well that did. We look at AEW Wembley and how well that did. And I think a lot of us just left feeling like you had a golden egg here. You had the chicken that laid the golden egg. You really did. The hottest scene in the world. You came in and decided, okay, maybe we can make something here. And those takeover shows sold out. They sold, every single one of them sold out. Everything was hot, everything was bubbly. And some people would talk about how, oh, we would go do takeover shows in Coventry and wouldn't sell it out, or we go do a takeover show in Birmingham, wouldn't sell it out. And it's like, NXT never sold out. NXT, when it was the hottest product, was literally in front of 500 fans. That was all it was in Full Sail, 500 fans. And when we were doing Coventry, it was a 3,000 seater venue, and we were still getting 1,200 people in. So it was still doing double the number that a regular NXT was doing, which was hot as hell in America. We were still doing these incredible numbers. So I just feel like there was such a pull for it. And every takeover sold out, 2,000, 3,000 seats. Dublin, before we had to shut down, it sold out. And it was looking great. And I just feel like they just dropped the ball. I just feel like they decided that it was too hard after COVID, that everything had moved on. I feel if we had just got out of that BT Sports studio and we'd moved on quicker and we'd pushed on, maybe we could have got back to the heights we were at before. And I think it was a clear path for everybody. And people can talk about the legacy of it, but the way I look at it is, at the moment, you've got Gunther, you've got Pete Dunne, you've got Ridge, you've got Rhea Ripley, you've got Piper Niven, you've got Isla Dawn, you've got Kaylee Ray, you've got Pretty Deadly, you've got Nathan Frazier, you've got A-Kid, Tyler Bates. Like, that's just off that little. And then, of course, Tony Storm went on to do AEW and stuff like that. So it's like the amount of people that came through those doors and actually smashed it. Imperium, like, all these people have smashed it in AEW. In WWE, who came through NXT UK. Like, I think there's people forget about that. How in that small space of time, set up in 2008, was gone then by what? 2000. It was 4 years. 4 years, and they had all those superstars came through, and are still with the company and are actually smashing it. So I do just think that they dropped the ball. I think they really just kind of they took something that was really special, unique, and could have really kind of been vibrant, and they tried to make it another WWE product. And then when it got difficult, they just decided to pack up and leave. When, like, I'm not saying we could have done Wembley, but I'm saying, like, I think we could have just kept building until eventually we could have had a building that had 10,000 people in it or something like that. I think that could be possible. But that's my biggest takeaway is there's just a hunger here for wrestling in Britain. And we love it so much. And we could have had a homegrown company here. They could have sold the rights they could have put us on Challenge. They could have put us on ITV for free. They could have given any of these stuff, and we could have. I think it would have smashed it. It would have literally gone on to become this big thing, and they just didn't. They just WWE are going to WWE, I guess.
Yeah, WWE are going to WWE. They like to do their sort of things. I mean, we do have the hunger for it. I mean, look at AEW. At the point, they were a 4-year-old company, and they managed to sell over 80,000 odd paid tickets for Wembley Stadium.
The biggest paid attendance of all time.
See, we have that hunger. Shut up, Americans. We will actually turn up for our events and make sure they get sold out indeed. Now, obviously, with 2023, before I talk about Impact and all that, I know you posted on your Instagram that you said multiple times at the start of 23, you were actually thinking of hanging things up and, taking things away. Why was that, and what changed your mind? But
yeah, it again, those things I said, like, I had that hard year of rehab. Wrestling in front of no one for the year before that was exhausting. We had those highs. We had Takeover Cardiff, Takeover Blackpool, Monday Night Raw, Dusty Classic, and then it was just all gone. And it was like we felt like in my head, I felt like I hit this pinnacle, and I just didn't know if I felt like when we released, I knew I had to graft again, and I'm not saying my heart wasn't in it, but I was exhausted. I was so tired through the rehab, and I'd been doing it 12 years, and I was just like, I just said to a few of my mates, said to Brandon, said to Hitch, said to Mark, I was like, boys, I don't know if I can do this. I was like, I don't know if I can do this again. And Mark and then said, well, it's up to you really, and they were real supportive. I think I've never been this person to go, I'm going to quit, and then people try to convince me. I've never ever said this in 12 years, and I think maybe I'm done, boys. I think maybe I'll just take some classes at the school up by me, and maybe maybe I'll do a little bit, and then like Riot Cabaret asked if I want to do a singles, and they were like the first place that did my singles, and I was like, yeah, I'll come in and do a little bit. And again, I was still like, I enjoyed it. I didn't know if that's what if I wanted it. Me and Mark went and did this cool little match at OTT, and it was all right. And then we had this low-key banger at OTT with Martin Steers and Fabio called The Fresheners. We had this low-key banger, and I was like, oh, I really enjoyed that. And then I had some other ones that were okay, and they were a little bit fun and stuff like that. And then it really, if I'm totally honest, it was like the Impact stuff. It was us going there and being treated well and having the match with the ABC, which everyone bloody loved. And then the next night, things get moved around and us end up wrestling the Machine Guns, which is a dream tag team, a match I never thought I'd ever get. So that happening, and then us doing really well and everyone loving it, and then us being invited back, and then them talking about putting the belts on us and all that stuff. It just snowballs. It goes from you have this feeling of, well, maybe I'm done, maybe I'll just have a few more, maybe I'll do a few appearances at Pro Wrestling Chaos, and then maybe I'll just slowly wind it down. I'm not talking about I'm going to do a retirement. It's just I'll wind it down and see where I am. And then you have one little match which you enjoy, and then you have another match which you enjoy, and then another door opens and you take that. You go, oh, well, I get to tick this off the list. Maybe if this is the last year, I get to take TNA, Impact, whatever off the list. And then that goes really well. And all of a sudden you get to take the Machine Guns off and you go, I'm quite enjoying this. This is quite fun. And then you're traveling the world, and all of a sudden then you're the Rev Pro Undisputed British Tag Team Champions, and you get to take your call off. I said this to, like, I'd wrestled at York Hall 3 times. I had never won at York Hall, and then I get to win next to Mark Andrews. Like, again, I get to wrestle Brendan White, one of my best mates, and Danny Jones, one of my best mates. We get to do it at York Hall, one of the most famous venues in this country. We get to do it with all 4 of us. Again, talk about going back to being friends and sharing your dreams with your friends. Getting to do that, amazing. And then all of a sudden, then we get invited back to TNA, and then all of a sudden, then we are the tag champions. And then this place wants us, and this place wants us, and all of a sudden, then it was like this. Like, I'm having the most fun I've ever had, and me and Mark are having these bangers and these bangers after bangers, and we're all of a sudden, then people are talking about us being one of the best tag teams in the world, and before you know it, then you look back on this year and go, bloody hell, 12 months ago I was thinking about not doing this anymore, and now this has been the most fun I've had in years. As I said, now it's like one of the most confident performer. I'm the most confident performer I've ever been. And I think it's just maybe because I said to myself, this could be the last year, and I took that pressure off myself. Maybe then that led to me enjoying it more. Maybe that led to performances being better because I wasn't trying to carve out this perfect year. I was just trying to have a bit of fun.
Yeah, it's sort of like that saying, just when you think you're out, they pull you back in.
Yeah.
Like, well, I love it too much now. And, obviously with wrestling as well, I think there's one thing about the images of it could be striking. Obviously Adrian Street in front of the coal mine, an historic picture in itself. Triple H making his 2002 return in the denim with the O2 playing. But I feel like you guys, Danny and Mark, when you and Mark were holding the Impact and Rev Pro Tag Team Champions, I think that's a striking image in itself. When you guys saw that and saw your results as a lovely 8x10, which I'm sure fans could buy and get signed and have some lovely monies to spend, did that really make you feel like, yeah, I was gone from the WWE, but now I'm still killing it. I still got it.
There's a lovely moment, I think, like Mark's been really good, and Mark's been documenting everything this last year. He's just decided he was going to do it. And this is where the term, like we started using the term summer of subculture and kind of push that. It really did end up becoming that. And Mark just recorded and documented everything. And Mark said to me, he's like, oh, he even needs to find time, or he's going to try to find somebody, and maybe they could put together like a little 45-minute to an hour long documentary about this or whatever. And Mark literally we do stuff, and then he'd talk to me and talk about my feelings about stuff, and we chat, and there's so much unseen footage that people haven't seen about the entire year, which Mark's been great documenting. Whether people will ever see that footage, I don't know, but he's got it. But there's a lovely moment of us walking backstage, and I think that is out there. Yeah, that is, I've definitely seen it, so that is out there. And it's we're walking backstage, and Mark's got the camera out, and he just goes, hey, a year ago we got released from the WWE just under a year ago, and now we're stood your Impact Wrestling World Tag Team Champions. And I have no doubt that I believe that this year Dani Luna will go on to become the Knockouts World Champion. I believe she will do it because she is one of the best wrestlers in the world. But it was just that moment. I think with her as well. Like that was her Impact was mental when we were flying over for Impact. She went, "I've never wrestled outside of the UK before," and we were like, "What?" And she's like, "I've never left the UK for wrestling." And we're like, "You're about to debut for Impact. What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Yeah, I've only ever done the UK." And we're like, "What?" So like for her as well, I think she's a grafter, and I think she's always been a grafter. But I think for her, it was more that she was willing to graft. I think it was just more the fact that me and Mark were doing it and kind of showing her how to graft, if that makes sense, but not how to graft, but in the sense of she was always been a grafter, but how to graft outside of what she already knew and how to try to open doors. And every opportunity she's been given, she's absolutely fucking smashed. So, but I think it's that moment where we're walking down the corridor, we've got the tag belts, and she just says this wonderful thing. She goes, "I'm so proud of my friends." And we have a little bit of a group hug, and because we all felt she was bloody injured when she got released, and she was actually like, I'd rehab, but she was injured, like, and she had to do another 2 months before she could actually wrestle again. And she's had such a good year, and she's absolutely killed it. So I think it was that moment of us going like, hey, I was almost out 4 months ago, and she was injured 4 months ago, and Mark was trying to hold all this team together, and now we're all like the Impact Wrestling World Title Champions. So I think that's the moment right there.
Moment indeed as well. And obviously, TNA would come over here and do 2 gut checks and a UK tour as well, which I know you guys would feature on as well. What does it mean to you to know you guys went over and Dani for the first time to now be like, oh, they're coming here now? Do you feel like you guys maybe had a play in that, or was it something that was like, oh yeah, let's do it?
I think it was just perfect timing. I think they already planned it. I think they did it. And then they just decided to come over and we're like, oh, that's really cool. But the one thing I really loved is we thought like they had some people come and do some stuff on those Impact tours that were, some people made their debuts and stuff like that were British names. And those people got good pops and stuff like that. But when we came out, nearly every place we came out to, it didn't feel like, oh, here's some here's some hometown heroes. It felt like, oh, here's the British people who are representing TNA, or here's the TNA people who are representing Britain. That's how it felt. So when we came out in Scotland and when we came out in Coventry, we got these Subculture chants, and I was like, oh shit, we're over. Like, this is great. So yeah, I don't think it was anything to do with us. I think it was just, again, perfect timing. But it was really cool that we got to do those tours, and we actually felt like we were members of the roster, not just tag-alongs.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you guys absolutely smashed it well. And obviously, touching upon Dani as well, she would sign with TNA as well and beat Alex Windsor for the Red Prawn Spirit Going Championship as well. I feel like this has got to be her year. The 2024 will be the year of Dani Luna, right?
100% has to be. Like, I feel like 2023 was the year of Dani Luna, but I feel like this year is where she takes a world championship. She has to. Like, I feel like NXT UK, WWE slept on her. Like I can argue and say that they slept on me and Mark and stuff like that, but we were given opportunities, and I feel like we did well when we were given those opportunities. I don't think she was given those opportunities at all. She had 1 or 2 matches, and they were good matches, but they shouldn't have released her. They really shouldn't have. This young, impressive, hungry talent. Like, the sky's the limit with that girl. It really is. I believe that she's gonna win the Impact Wrestling Knockouts Championship, the TNA Knockouts Championships. I believe then that down the line she'll sign for another promotion. I think she'll end up headlining a WrestleMania at some point. I really do. And that's not just me saying it because I'm her friend. And you go, oh, I think she will. Like, I think she will. I think she has that. I think she'll end up following the same path as like a Deonna, where she'll end up showing up in AEW, or she'll end up like going straight to WWE and stuff like that. Like, the girl is so super young. Like, she's like 24. She's like 24. I think she'll win a world championship this year. She's in the best shape she's ever been. She's become a better wrestler. As I said before, she's had like 200 matches. That's it. That's mental. And she's competed at such a high caliber. Like, this year is where the world realizes how good Dani Luna is. Europe, no. This year is where the world realizes. And I think over the next couple of years, while she's under contract with TNA, will be everyone realizing she's this world beater. And then if she decides to stay there, she does. Cool, totally up to her. It's her career. She does whatever she wants to. But like, I think when that contract comes to an end, the choices she'll have at her feet will be vast. And I think, again, I don't know how long. I'm not going to talk about how long she's signed, but she's 24. Like, she won't be anywhere near her 30s by the time that contract comes up. She'll still be a baby, and she'll be a far better professional wrestler than she is now, and she's already incredible. So this year is the year of Danny Luna.
I'm calling it now, Flash. I want to see Danny Belt Collector Luna get all the belts. All the belts. Look, Kenny Omega, you had your time, but Danny Luna Belt Collector.
Yeah.
Give me that. That would be an absolute amazing thing to see as well. Now, obviously, when I had Mark on, I mentioned about his promotion Attack. Obviously, you and Boar have Chaos, hell of a promotion in itself. For our viewers who may be not familiar with Chaos and its history and what you guys present, just to tell them about just Chaos, just now to them, Flash.
So Chaos has been around now for 10 years. She had its 10-year anniversary this year. So it was a promotion created by a group of 3 lads, Dave, Nick, and Rob. So Dave was Dave Mercy, and then you got Nick and Rob were Gideon and Jekyll. So they were a bunch of Bristol-based professional wrestlers. They were doing, as I said, back in the day, there was a lot of promotions that just had one shots and you come in and come out. Didn't really have a fan base that followed everything, and they believed there was a niche in the Bristol market for this. So they created Pro Wrestling Chaos. They were all about kind of giving new opportunities to young people. They gave, I think one of their early shows has a tag team has a triple threat match with Eddie Dennis versus Mark Andrews versus Pete Dunne when they're all relatively unknowns. They took me, and literally, I remember, like, they took me when I was not a heel anyway, and they gave me this chance to just kind of go into this, and I ended up becoming one of the biggest characters on their shows, and to a point where when my shoulder came out the first time in 2016, Dave rang me up, and I went, "Oh, sorry, mate, I've hurt my shoulder, I'm going to have to cancel." And Dave's response to me was, "How's your left hand?" And I went, "What do you mean?" He went, "Can you hold a microphone?" And I went, "Yeah." He went, "You can hold a microphone, you're valuable to me." And he gave me all my dates for the entire year. Wild Boar kind of like found himself really and was able to, he had some great matches with like Sami Callihan, Hardcore Holly. Like the list is endless from the people he wrestled there, and real. And in 2019, we had a message come through of Dave, Nick, and Rob, and they were just like, "Hey, we're thinking of hanging it up." The promotion was selling out every show. They were still selling out every time. They just said that we feel we've taken this as far as we feel we can. I think there was a big place down, a big theatre down in Bristol they were trying to get into, and the theatre didn't want wrestling. And it was like, we've sold out shows now that have had 500, 600 people in. We can't take this any further. We've got this fan base that loves it, but I think for us, it's taking too much time now. We're not taking a full-time living out of this. If we want to, it would involve us having to risk everything and quit our jobs and all this other stuff. And he was like, "I've got a fan." All of them was like, "I think this is just the end of the road." And they sent that message, I want to say at like 10 o'clock. By 10 past 10, I had rung Dave Mercier and I had tried to convince him to sell the company to me. And he literally spent the next 20 minutes trying to talk me out of it and tell me like, "No, don't do it," all this other. And I had a conversation with the wife, and she knows I take on a lot, and I'm very. Pause that 2 seconds. There's someone at the door. Sorry. So yeah, the wife knows I just take on a lot, and I kind of like I give everything I do. I give everything to everything I do. So I think she was a bit like, I don't know if you, at the time I was employed by WWE, and I think she was a bit like, I don't want you taking on all this. So my thought process wasn't, okay, I shouldn't do this. My thought process was, how do I rope somebody else into doing this with me? So I can sell it to the wife that I won't be taking on too much, even though I'm a control freak and I'll definitely be doing 90% of the work because I won't give up any of it. But I can convince her to say yes. So I rang the most laid-back man that I know, Wild Boar, Mike Hitchman, and convinced him to go in with me. And I just want to say, like, the owners of Pro Wrestling Chaos, they got 4 or 5 offers of people when they were selling up. People that were willing to give them 3 times the amount of money that me and Boar eventually bought the company for. 3 times. But they knew that anyone else they sold it to would change Pro Wrestling Chaos into whatever they wanted it to be, and they were trying to buy venue rights, and they were trying to buy a fan base, and they were trying to, and maybe it would go on to become this or go on to become that. They knew that me and Boar would take it, and we'd been there since day one. We knew what Chaos was about. We knew the ethos. We knew the fans, and they accepted to take less money off us. And we could have pushed the money up, and we probably would have, but they agreed what we offered them. They agreed it. And we found out later that they could have made more. And we signed that deal in Dave's kitchen, I want to say 3 weeks into maybe the first week in November. They had planned to have their last 2 shows in Yates, so a 500-seater, which they sold out in the January. And then a second one in a small little venue, which would be their last one, which was the same venue they ran their first show out of. So it was a full circle moment. They'd already planned all this. We bought the company in November, and we told nobody at all. We stayed with everybody, kept it quiet. I didn't tell Mark. We didn't tell Eddie. We didn't tell any of the roster. We didn't tell at all. So they go into this November show, which is in King's Oak, which should become the mainstay place at Chaos. And everyone out there had this killer event. Dave, Nick, and Rob walked out at the end, and everyone backstage believed that it was the last show in King's Oak, and this is how it was going to be. And Dave comes out, they do a little talk, and they go, "We've made a lot of memories here. We just want to make one more." Me and Boar walk out. We do a nice little speech. Eddie Dennis on commentary, and Eddie Dennis says he thought it was the 2 mainstays of Chaos coming out to thank the owners on behalf of all the boys. And I just turned to him and go, and I love this clip. I just turn around and say, I want to thank you all. I want to thank all these fans, and just want to say one more thing to these fans as an early Christmas present to all of you. We'd formally like to say that we'd like to purchase Pro Wrestling Chaos, and the place erupts, and we buy a professional wrestling company that, and it's fantastic. It's great. Couldn't go any better. Except we bought it in November 2019. And then they ran shows in January 2020. And then we booked our first show April 2020, and the world shut down. And then we spent the next year and a half trying to get back into every venue we could, and they wouldn't let us back in because of COVID regulations. But we've been fortunate that we were able to get back in 2022. We were able to get back in finally. So 2 years it was shut for. And we came back, and that fan base is still there. That the 250-seater venue sold out in 36 hours. Bam, tickets gone. Nothing announced, just a poster. That's all it was. It was gone. And then we ran another show 2 months later, and it sold out in 2 days again. And since then, last year, we ran 13 events. Out of those 13 events, I think we sold out 9 of those events, and then the other ones, then we went to bigger venues, and we did one venue that had over 400, another venue that had over 500. And this year years ago we put season tickets on sale, and we sold more season tickets this year than in the history of the company. And that's all. Again, I like to say that we've kept it going, but it always because of the good work that Rob, Nick, and Dave did. And they taught us a lot of stuff that we understand about wrestling and how we got ourselves over is thanks to their help, and we were able to kind of carry that on.
Wow, Flash Robbers, like you took a racehorse that was ready to go and you just kept that race going, man. I mean,
yeah, they gave us a good racehorse.
Indeed, they did. Hey, honestly, folks, if you're watching right now, check out Chaos. Buy some tickets, go see great shows. Always support your local indie, because I feel like from what I've seen on the Instagram, this is a place you definitely want to check out. Honestly, folks, do indeed. Now, Flash, I want to propose something to you as well. When I had Mark on, I proposed a little dream scenario, and I want to know if yours lines up with his. Mark said that he would love to maybe do intergender trios at AEW Wembley 2024. You and him and Danny versus the House of Black. Malachi Black, Buddy Matthews, and Brody King. Do you agree, or is there maybe another dream matchup you would love to have?
Yeah, again, Wembley would be an absolute dream, wouldn't it? Like it's no secret at all that we'd love to do AEW, and TNA are great in the sense of allowing people to kind of cross over and do bits and pieces. I wouldn't mind that. Like Malachi, I've wrestled before. I've wrestled him on 1 or 2 occasions. Shared a hotel room with Brody on a Progress tour, so got a good relationship with both of those guys. Haven't met Julia, but again, yeah, I think that's if we're looking at like what would be the perfect intergender, the thought of them all coming out in black and us all coming out in our white gear and stuff like that, like it's this lovely little mix there. Yeah, I think that would be. I think we could have an absolute banger with those three.
Yeah, I would love to see that, and to think as well, you guys can maybe hold the trios championships of AEW as well. You, Danny, and Mark. I mean, what would it mean to you to hold a trios title, all three of you being friends and creating this group, doing all you've done to build yourselves up, and now holding a trios championship?
It would be incredible, again, being able to hold those things. Like me and Danny have just been able to kind of freebird the British tag team championships round recently and stuff like that because of Mark being injured. So that was great. But to hold a belt, all three of us at the same time, all of us being friends from this group that we created, that's obviously like WWE didn't maybe see a lot in and they kind of let go. That'd be great. Again, against two guys in the trio as well that we've known and kind of came through the ranks with, would be absolutely great. And then Wembley, the most iconic stadium in this country. Yeah, it would mean the absolute world. And also as well, like if we were able to do that, it would be like with the first intergender trios champions as well, which is something we want to pride ourselves doing. Like Andy Quilden at RevPro doesn't really do intergender matches, and we kind of came in and said we want to do them at RevPro, and then we got to do a 6-man, and now Danny's and me have been able to kind of defend the belts as an intergender team. And now this week he's got another intergender tag team on, so I feel like we've opened the floodgates now, which is great. I love it. I love intergender tag team matches. So yeah, I absolutely love that.
Hey TK, you want to make history, mate? You want to make history? Come on, second All In, trios champions of Subculture. Make it happen, buddy. But something I've always raised as well to guests when they come on, I would love to see this personally. AEW All In 0 Hour, a British showcase of the young talent that are hungry, get them that big stage to showcase their stuff to the world. I want to know, Flash, is there any names you would love to see get that showcase on a big stage?
Yeah, there's lots, right? If I'm totally honest, right, one of the people I think is one of the unsung heroes in this country and doesn't get the recognition he deserves is Wild Boar Mike Hitchner. I'm not just saying it because he's one of my best friends, but I believe that he's so unique, he's so different. He's one of the people that I always thought to myself, if Vince McMahon, when he was in charge, had seen him, I think he would have just been rocketed straight to the main roster because he's so unique looking. He's built for TV. Like, when we were there, Matt Bloom loved him. Matt Bloom, like, he didn't have a tryout or anything. Like, Pete Dunne said, you need to see this guy. Matt Bloom saw him. Matt Bloom hired him. Like, that's literally how it was. That's how good he is. I'd love that. I'd love for him to get that opportunity. Like, Greedy Souls, I believe, are one of the best tag teams, if not the best tag team in Europe, if we just count me and Mark. So I think they're great. Oh, there's so many talent. Nico Angelo needs to be out there more. There's a Harrison Bennett needs. Oh my god! Like, I feel like it'd have to be a 30-person battle royal just to get a fraction of the people in there that people don't know about. Like, there's so many good people, so many different people. Like Michael Oku's incredible. Man like Derice is incredible. Oh, there's so many. Leon Cage is this 16-year-old prodigy, and he's actually smashing it. Yeah, Tate Mayfield. Oh, there's so many, mate. There's so many. But I would absolutely love to see that.
I mean, hey, then think about it. 5 years down the line, you could teach that Battle Royale at next classes. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
Indeed, you can. Well, Flash Morgan Webster, my friend, this has been an absolute pleasure to have you on and have you just chat about your journey and everything. It's been a true pleasure. But one final question before we wrap up. Say 10 years down the line, you've got someone coming into your class, fresh talent, and he said, I wanted to become a wrestler because I saw you and Mark win at TakeOver and get the NXT tag belts and be representative for me as a young individual. With that speech coming from a young talent, knowing that they got into wrestling because they saw you guys win on the big stage, win the big one for the WWE, I just want to know, how would you feel?
Yeah, it's so hard when it comes, like, I feel like there's a big thing in wrestling where it's like loads of people have kind of really pushed that it's like, oh, it's cool to not care. That's the whole thing. Oh, I don't care. It's cool, stuff like that. And like, I think it's cool as shit to care. Like, and it's cool as shit to like think about these moments and these things you've done and be proud of it. And lots of people don't get photos with their heroes because they think it's like it's marky or it's cringe and stuff like that. And it's like that's all we have is these moments and these. So like, yeah, it would mean the absolute world. And then to take somebody like that, if they came in, and to be able to like nurture them and push them and get them on shows, and then maybe they go off and they start to achieve loads of big things, like, and kind of say like, oh, this really kind of like is a full circle moment, like the Adrian Street thing. That would be absolutely incredible. I said this year, one of the other reasons kind of like I didn't quit this year as well. Like I started teaching at school. Now I, of course, own my own school, but there's a tag team called Act 2, which are actually killing it at the moment. And those two lads just came to all my sessions and they were hungry and they were pushing each other and they were smashing it. And I was lucky enough to be able to defend the Impact Wrestling World Tag Team Championships against them on our run while me and Mark were champions over here. And like I said to him after the match, I was like, you guys are one of the reasons why I didn't quit. Because like you guys are so hungry, so passionate. And how could I preach to you guys that you need to get out there and graft and grind when I wasn't willing to graft and grind? So yeah, I think I don't just think it's going to be in 10 years' time. I think there is a lot of people that come through the doors now. And I'm not saying it's because they saw us win those belts, but they know of me and they've seen my stuff. And hopefully they can see what I'm trying to do now and what I am doing now. And maybe that motivates and inspires them. But there's so many people at the New Wave Wrestling West Midlands School that constantly inspire me every week to try to push on, because I know they're going to be some of the best in the world one day.
Absolutely, brother. And who knows, maybe we could have the next generation of subculture within Wales emerge upon the scene. Flash, brother, this has been an absolute pleasure. Now, viewers as well, if you've loved what you heard here, I will include a link to Flash's Instagram. I will include an Instagram link to the Subculture page. Get yourself some Subculture merch, to Chaos, and to New Midlands. New
Wave Wrestling West Midlands.
Bingo. There. See, I used to have an afro. All the information was contained in there, but it is gone now. So yes, I will include all 4 Instagram links. Click them, follow them, see the journey, buy the stuff, and just see greatness within the entire Welsh scene. Flash Morgan Webster, brother, it has been a pleasure, folks. I would say the whole YouTuber stick, but look, it's been around since 2005. I'm not going to insult your intelligence. You know what to do. Well, folks, stay well and